Good evening once again. I'm Ben Mason with Hearts Warmth Ministries, and this is my YouTube channel where I like to come on and tell you guys what I find when I'm searching for things from the Lord or things that are revealed to me by the Lord. And I've got this title today after this message. I don't know, I had this vision of like those picket signs and everything you seen like during the 60s and stuff that said make love not war, and God said make love bring peace. And so today we're going to talk about what it means to be a peacemaker, what are the rewards of being a peacemaker, and what are the characteristics of a peacemaker? First of all, what is a peacemaker? And this title, this searching this week, it came from me reading in Matthew 5, and I got to verse number 9, and that's where it started. And then I really dug into Matthew 5. I encourage you, we're not going to go through the whole chapter. We're going to go through some of it, but if you have the time, or if you don't have the time, make the time and read Matthew 5. It's Jesus speaking. So there's power, major power in those words, and profound wisdom and understanding of God to be found in those letters in red, so to speak. So without any further ado, let's get into it tonight. Again, it's make love, bring peace, and we're going to start in chapter 5 of Matthew, verses 8 and 9 to start with. So, what bliss you experience when your heart is pure, for then your eyes will be open to see more and more of God. How blessed you are when you make peace, for then you will be recognized as a true child of God. That's the Passion Translation. In some translations it says, blessed are the peacemakers. And so, what are the blessings of making peace? That was my question. And I thought, well, what defines a peacemaker? So I looked up the literal definition, and it says a peacemaker is a person who helps prevent or stop argument, a fight, or a war. One who makes peace by reconciling parties at variance. That means people at a difference with one another. So, to understand what a peacemaker is, I guess you have to understand what peace is. And so the definition for that was freedom from disturbance, tranquility. A state or period when there is no war or war has ended. So, if we're to be a peacemaker, then we have to be someone who is tranquil, who is free of disturbance. We have to be in a constant state of no argument, no war, no fight going on within our own selves first. We have to be at peace in order to bring peace. So how do we be a peacemaker? Right? So we're going to go further down in Matthew now, verses 21 through 26, and I'm going to read in this same Passion Translation. You're familiar with the commandment that the older generation was taught. Do not murder or you will be judged. But I'm telling you, if you hold anger in your heart toward a fellow believer, you are subject to judgment, and whoever demeans and insults a fellow believer is answerable to the congregation, and whoever calls down curses upon a fellow believer is in danger of being sent to a fiery hell. So then if you are presenting a gift before the altar in the temple and suddenly you remember a quarrel you have with a fellow believer, leave your gift there in front of the altar and go at once to apologize with the one who is offended. Then after you have reconciled, come back to the altar and present your gift. It is always better to come to terms with the one who wants to sue you before you go to trial. Or you may be found guilty by the judge, and he will hand you over to the officers who will throw you in prison. Believe me, you won't get out of prison until you have paid the full amount. I think of it in this way when he talks about being thrown into prison. Sometimes a prison is our own state of mind, our own state of being, that we're stuck in the same way of living, a repetitive cycle, because we don't reconcile things. We don't seek to bring peace in situations. And so there we stay in a constant prison of turmoil and regret and disappointment and despair and depression. So in this time, when you were sued by someone and you owed money, they put you in prison until the debt was paid. But today, I think of it more in the terms of, not so much the literal prison, but the prison of our own making, so to speak. So, if we're to be God's children, as it talked about, right, in 9 and 8 and 9 we read, how blessed are you when you make peace, for then you will be recognized as a true child of God. So God's children are those who make peace. That's what that tells me, right? And so we're going to go down even further in Matthew 5 here. We're going to go to verses 41 through 48. And then we're going to bring all this together. I mean, there's so much in this chapter, really. Everything that he spoke in this chapter, I mean, there's so much to glean from it for your own personal walk. But we'll start here in 41. And should people in authority take advantage of you, do more than what they demand. Learn to generously share what you have with those who ask you for help. And don't close your heart to the one who comes to borrow from you. Your ancestors have also been taught to love your neighbors and hate the one who hates you. However, I say to you, love your enemy and bless the one who curses you. Do something wonderful for the one who hates you, and respond to the very ones who persecute you by praying for them. For that will reveal your identity as children of your heavenly Father. He is kind to all by bringing the sunrise to warm and rainfall to refresh, whether a person does what is good or evil. What reward do you deserve if you only love the lovable? Don't even tax collectors do that? How are you any different from others if you limit your kindness only to your friends? Don't even the ungodly do that. Since you are children of a perfect Father in heaven, you are to be perfect like him. So as God's children, we're called to make peace, right? We're called to do these things. And I mean, there's so much in this chapter that can really reveal to you what a peacemaker looks like, turn another cheek, all the things in this chapter that Jesus spoke about. Really define how we should live our life and how we should, how our heart should be. Our heart should be in line with God, to love our neighbor as ourselves, to take care of the widows and the orphans, to do all the things that are good, and to be a person that's not caught up into the things that bring destruction, the things that bring war, the things that bring fight, that bring argument. We're called to be a peacemaker in those situations and calm the storm, so to speak. So, when Jesus was in the boat and they woke him up, he was resting, in the storm. He wasn't worried about the storm. These guys were all fishermen, right? They'd experienced storms before. They'd gotten through storms before, right? But for some reason, this storm terrified them. It was that bad. As fishermen, they knew that this was bad and they weren't going to make it, right? But Jesus was asleep. He was content. He knew that they were going to the other side because he said, let us go to the other side. But they couldn't see that. See, everything that we're able to do, everything that we're able to let go of, that we're able to perform any good work, anything. It really is not from us. We have to be in tune with what God has for us, for what uh, we're to be like Him, right? We're to be a person who brings contentment and peace, and that atmosphere follows us because His Spirit dwells within us. And we have to seek Him to find that. It's not something that we naturally have in the flesh. It's not something I naturally have in the flesh, anyway. I have to seek God for it. And so, um, as God's children, we're the ones who make peace. So, I guess my question would be to myself is, well, what defines someone who is a peacemaker? What's the definition? What are the traits, the characteristics of a peacemaker? And I was led to James 3:13 through 18 for this. I'm going to bring that up. So it's true wisdom comes from God, right? Verse 13, if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is a selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. So it talked about all the traits, the characteristics there of what it is, right? It says that if we're wise and we understand God's ways, we'll live an honorable life. We'll do good works with humility, right? But if we are have our own ambitions behind it, if we're I see this a lot, man. People think that they're good because of the good they do, and you're not good because of the good you do. The only thing good is Christ. Christ within us is what makes us good. But people think that they're good because of the good they do. And that's a selfish ambition, right? That's prideful. It's selfish, right? And it says here that it's selfish ambition. There you will find disorder of every evil and evil of every kind, right? So we're not doing these things. We're not gaining these traits out of selfish reasons, right? We're gaining them from proving that we want to live an honorable life because we're wise and understand God's ways, right? We're seeking for the understanding from God. His ways higher than ours. His understanding greater than our understanding. And so when we're seeking those things, that's where the true wisdom comes from. So the traits that I wrote down from that were that we were morally pure, that we're peaceable, that we're gentle, right? We're open to reason. In other words, we're not so stuck in one direction that we can't see another point of view. Meaning, on either side of an argument, we want to be centered to where it brings peace to the situation and not more discord. We're merciful, right? What greater way to bring peace than being a person of mercy, right? What mercy have you been given? We're impartial, we're not taking sides. We're not deviating, from what the characteristics that God is, that Christ had, we are also to have. God shines through us. Christ shines through us. We're patient. We're willing to put ourselves aside, right? We're willing to step out of our own little bubbles of what we think is so important for us and take time to be a peacemaker, take time to be someone who calms the storm in someone else's life, who stops the raging sea, who says, "Peace, be still," like Jesus did in that boat. And we're growing in our faith. We're growing in the faith, and we're growing in the gospel truth, right? So that's probably the most important thing, is that last one, right? Because if we're not um, growing in the truth, the truth of the gospel is basically the be all end all, right? It's the beginning of all and it's the end of all. All the other traits that I discussed, moral purity, being peaceable, being gentle, open to reason, mercy, impartial, patience, willing to put myself aside, all those things are traits of me growing in the gospel truth, the revelation of who God is, and how He is, and how He loves, and how He brings peace, and how He brings comfort, and how He does those things. And I'm called to be like that, and I invite that into my life, right? We have to invite that in. We have to let Christ come in and not only be our Savior, but be our Lord. And by being our Lord, then we take on the traits of Christ. We take on the characteristics of Christ, the likeness of Christ. We walk as a shining example. In the Bible it talks about no one takes a light and puts it underneath a basket. We have to be that city on the hill that can be seen, that the Christ can be seen within us. So the only way we're going to accomplish all those traits is by seeking that out and living out the truth of the gospel, carrying that truth with us, carrying that torch inside of our hearts, that love for what God has done for us, that love for what He can do, that belief and knowing that He's a miracle working God. That's what changes our direction. So we can only live this out and walk it out by being empowered by the Spirit of God. We have to seek God, people. We can't do this. We cannot do this on our own. It's not who we are as fleshly, worldly beings. A Spirit-filled life has to be filled with the Spirit. A Spirit-led life. A life that leads people to the Spirit of God has to be filled, has to be renewed daily. You have to die to this old vessel daily. It makes us visible. It makes Christ visible when we are a peacemaker, when we're walking out the life God's designed. That we're calming situations, we're calming storms, we are bringing together people who are divided. We are resolving argument and situations that are detrimental to people. Sometimes it's in our own family. Sometimes it's right in your own house. Sometimes it's with your own spouse, right? Sometimes you just want to argue, right? You just want to be right. I have to ask myself sometimes, how important is it that I'm right? It's not all that great to be right. Because after I prove that I'm right, then I've created an offense, over something that didn't really matter. Count the cost, people. Count the cost of being right. Be peaceable, be gentle, be patient, be willing to put yourself aside. It's required. It's required if we're going to be a peacemaker. So if we are walking out our life Inspired by the gospel truth, this makes us visible to those who are non believers. It's an attractive quality and only manifests in those who truly believe. Do you believe? You know? Do you believe that you can bring peace to any situation? Do you believe that um, everyone you meet, and that means everyone. I know I gave you an extreme example last week, but it's true. No person does God not love. He created everyone. No person did he not have uh, a purpose and a plan laid out for. Even ones who haven't chose it all along. He still loves them. It's his desire that they would come to him. It's hard. It's hard to live this way. But the blessing, right? The question I asked to start with, what are the blessings of making peace? Wisdom is the blessing. Understanding is the blessing. Having my own sense of peace is the blessing. Seeing people come to a life of peace is my blessing. You know, we live in a violent, chaotic world, you know. It's relentless every day, you know. Everywhere you look, everywhere you see, people are in strife, people are in argument, you know, people are just one side's battling against the other. Um, we're not called to be that. We're called to be the peacemaker. So, you know, if we walk as Christ walked, right? If we speak as Christ speak, right? If we love as Christ loved, right? We can do this. So the title is Make Love Bring Peace. So make the love that God has shown you come into your heart. Make the love that you've received outwardly, come outwardly into other people's lives. Pour that love out that's been so freely given to you. Pour that mercy out that's been given to you. Pour that gentleness out. Pour that patience out that God had with you. God, he had so much patience with me. Right? God's willingness to keep reaching out after me, man. Keep sending a person to say, hey, this, that, or the other. What about God? Right? Be that person. Pour that love out today. Make love your number one priority. And I promise you, if you start making love your number one priority to all people, it will bring peace. You know, if we all had this philosophy of loving our neighbor as ourselves, truly, what a different world we would live in, right? So in this violent, relentless, hostile, chaotic world, may we all walk as peacemakers, that Christ would be visible in our lives. You know, he gets all the glory. Gets all the glory. You know, if I was in charge of my own way, I'd be sitting somewhere on a bar stool or falling off of it right about now. But God chose something else. God chose for me to start walking this path. God chose for me to feel like sharing what he's done for me. Feel like showing you the love that he's shown me. Feel like telling you, hey, it don't have to be that way. There's a way, right? There's a way where you can be the light, right? It also talks about in this Matthew 5 about being the salt, right? That we're to be like salt. And what does salt do? Salt changes whatever you add it to. It changes the taste, right? It changes whatever you add to. It changes what's going on, right? It's used for many things, salt. But that's what we're called to be. We're called to be the salt and the light. I still encourage you guys to really read this Matthew chapter 5. It's really pay attention, man. This is what Jesus was saying. You know, walk it out. Walk it out for him. Give him all the honor and the glory. With my walking it out before him, I wasn't caring about anybody but Ben. Selfish ambition. In the truth, right? When we're walking in the truth, God alone is able to make lasting peace. Right? Through you, through me. Be the light, be the salt. Change the flavor of the room, right? That you walk into. Darkness has to flee from the light. You know what I mean? Wherever you are, just be the light. You know what I mean? Be the positivity. Be the gentleness. Be the graciousness. Be the mercy in every situation you encounter, right? Be the one who calms the storm. Make love. Bring peace. Right? The love in your heart will bring peace to the situations. I love you all. Be blessed. Be encouraged today. Know that God is for you. Then who could be against you? No one. I'm fortunate to have been given the grace I've been given by God for him to have found me worthy, man, of whatever it is he has for me. I'm excited to find out. I'm excited for you to find out. You know, I've been through trial after trial over the last couple months. Health problems. My wife's had surgery. We've had some other things happen. But you know what? Nothing can bring me down. Not today. Things that happened in this last month and a half in the past before Jesus, that would have just destroyed my whole world, man. I would have just been down in the dumps and depressed and drunk and whatever else over these things. But today, I can take them on the chin with joy because I know my God is for me, man. My God's for you. Seek after him today. Again, I encourage you to read this chapter 5. It's a blessing, and I thank you. Subscribe to this channel. Share it, guys. I'm not sure where and all it's going. I do know that I'm going to be looking for some people who want to help out because I'm very technically challenged with video editing and things like that. I have a lot of plans for this channel as far as bringing you content that helps in your own backyard with finding ways you can be of help for God in your own backyard and showcasing other ministries and stuff like that. So God's going to send the right person. I know that. But until then, God's going to give me a word. You want to know why? Because I'm going to seek for it. And where you seek, you will find. Have a blessed night.